What started as a routine late-night interview turned into television chaos when Elon Musk confronted Stephen Colbert over damaging accusations about Tesla's safety records, sparking a heated exchange that ended with the billionaire storming off set. The Late Show studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy as audience members settled into their seats, unaware they were about to witness one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. Stephen Colbert sat behind his familiar desk, shuffling through his note cards with the practiced confidence of a veteran host who had navigated thousands of interviews. Tonight's guest was particularly high-profile. Elon Musk, the polarizing tech mogul, whose every public appearance seemed to generate headlines. As the cameras rolled and the familiar theme music faded, Colbert delivered his opening monologue with his characteristic blend of wit and political commentary. The audience responded with their expected laughter and applause. But there was an underlying tension in the air. Earlier that day, several news outlets had published investigative reports questioning Tesla's autopilot safety data, and industry insiders knew this topic would likely surface during the interview. Musk emerged from backstage wearing his typical casual attire, a simple black t-shirt and jeans, his expression more serious than his usual media appearances. The initial pleasantries proceeded normally as he took his seat across from Colbert, exchanging the standard host-guest banter about his latest ventures and upcoming projects. The audience seemed engaged, laughing at the appropriate moments as Musk discussed SpaceX's recent achievements and his plans for Mars colonization. However, the atmosphere shifted dramatically when Colbert transitioned to more controversial territory. "Elon, I have to ask about the recent reports regarding Tesla's autopilot system," Colbert began, his tone taking on a more serious edge. "Several investigations suggest that Tesla may have misrepresented safety statistics to regulators and the public. How do you respond to allegations that your company has essentially been lying about the safety of autonomous driving features?" Musk's posture immediately stiffened, his jaw clenching as he processed the accusation. "That's a completely false characterization, Stephen," he replied, his voice carrying a hint of irritation. "Tesla's autopilot has prevented thousands of accidents. Our data is transparent and verified by independent third parties." But Colbert wasn't backing down. He leaned forward, consulting his notes with theatrical precision. According to internal documents obtained by investigative journalists, Tesla engineers raised concerns about the autopilot system's limitations. Yet marketing materials continue to promote it as full self-driving. "Doesn't that concern you, as CEO?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, and Musk's expression darkened considerably. "You're cherry-picking information from disgruntled former employees," he shot back, his voice rising slightly. "This is exactly the kind of irresponsible journalism that puts people at risk by discouraging them from using safer technology." Colbert's eyebrows raised and a slight smirk played across his face. "Irresponsible journalism? These are peer-reviewed studies and government investigations, not tabloid gossip. Are you suggesting that federal regulators and safety experts are all wrong?" The tension in the studio was palpable now. Audience members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, sensing that this was no longer typical late-night television banter. Musk leaned back in his chair, his fingers drumming against the armrest as he formulated his response. "What I'm suggesting, Stephen, is that you're being deliberately misleading for the sake of entertainment. You're taking complex engineering challenges and turning them into sound bites that serve your narrative." Colbert's demeanor shifted from playful to confrontational. "My narrative? Elon, people have died in Tesla accidents involving autopilot. Families have lost loved ones. This isn't about entertainment. It's about accountability. When you promise full self-driving capabilities and charge customers thousands of dollars for features that aren't ready, how is that not misleading?" The accusation struck a nerve. Musk's face flushed slightly and his voice took on a sharp edge. "Every technology has risks, Stephen. More people die in regular car accidents every day than have ever been involved in Tesla autopilot incidents. You're creating fear about technology that saves lives because it generates ratings for your show. The studio fell silent except for the hum of cameras and lighting equipment. Colbert straightened in his chair, his expression hardening. So now I'm the one putting people at risk? That's rich coming from someone who's made billions of dollars selling promises you can't keep. Musk stood up abruptly, his chair rolling, backward with the force of his movement. You know what, Stephen? This is exactly what's wrong with media today. You invite people on your show under the pretense of having a conversation, then ambush them with gotcha questions designed to make them look bad. The camera operators scrambled to adjust their angles as the confrontation escalated beyond typical television boundaries. Colbert remained seated, but his voice grew louder. Ambush? These are legitimate questions that any journalist should ask. If you can't handle scrutiny about your company's safety record, maybe you shouldn't be running a car company. The words hit Musk like a physical blow. His eyes flashed with anger as he stepped closer to Colbert's desk, pointing an accusatory finger. You have no idea what you're talking about. You sit behind this desk making jokes and think that gives you the authority to judge people who are actually trying to solve the world's problems. Colbert shot back without hesitation. And you think being rich gives you the right to avoid answering tough questions? This isn't your Twitter echo chamber, Elon. This is television, and people deserve honest answers about the safety of products they're buying. The confrontation had reached a boiling point, with both men now standing and facing each other across the desk. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what felt more like a street fight than a late-night interview. Production assistants hovered nervously at the edges of the set, unsure whether to intervene or let the drama play out for the cameras. Musk's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. You want honest answers, Stephen? Here's honesty. You're a failed comedian who makes a living attacking people who actually accomplish things. The insult hung in the air like a toxic cloud, and for a moment, the entire studio seemed frozen in time. Colbert's face went through a rapid transformation. Surprise, then hurt, then burning anger. The audience gasped collectively, some covering, their mouths in shock at witnessing such a personal attack on live television. Behind the cameras, producers frantically whispered into their headsets, debating whether to cut to commercial or let the train wreck continue. Colbert's hands gripped, the edge of his desk so tightly his knuckles turned white. When he spoke, his voice was ice-cold and controlled, the practiced composure of a man who had spent years dealing with hostile guests and political figures. Failed comedian? That's interesting coming from someone whose idea of humor is posting memes about cryptocurrency and making juvenile jokes about bodily functions on social media. The comeback struck its target perfectly. Musk's face reddened as he realized his personal attack had backfired, opening him up to equally cutting criticism. At least I don't hide behind a fake persona every night, he snapped back, his composure completely shattered now. You're nothing but a corporate puppet reading lines written by other people. The gloves were officially off. Colbert stood up from behind his desk, matching Musk's aggressive posture. Fake persona? Rich coming from someone who's built an entire brand around being the real-life Tony Stark, while your companies burn through billions in taxpayer subsidies. How many government handouts does it take to fund your midlife crisis space program? The attack on SpaceX clearly infuriated Musk even more than the Tesla criticisms. His voice rose to nearly a shout. SpaceX has revolutionized space travel and saved NASA billions of dollars. We've accomplished more in a decade than government agencies managed in 50 years. Colbert wasn't impressed. Revolutionized? You mean you've turned space exploration into a billionaire's playground, while people on Earth can't afford healthcare or housing. But sure, let's prioritize getting rich people to Mars while the planet burns. The audience was completely silent now, some filming with their phones despite security protocols, sensing they were witnessing television history. The confrontation had evolved beyond professional disagreement into something deeply personal and ugly. Musk began pacing behind his chair like a caged animal, his hands gesturing wildly as he spoke. "This is exactly the problem with people like you," Musk said, his voice dripping with contempt. "You tear down anyone who tries to push humanity forward, because you're too small-minded to understand vision. You'd rather keep people dependent on fossil fuels and government programs than embrace innovation." Colbert laughed bitterly. "Vision? Is that what you call it when you promise full self-driving, cars for over a decade and still can't deliver? When you claim you're going to solve traffic with underground tunnels that move slower than walking? Your vision is just expensive marketing for half-baked ideas." The personal nature of the attacks was escalating rapidly. Musk stopped pacing and fixed Colbert with a withering stare. "You know what your problem is, Stephen? You've never built anything in your life. You've never created jobs, never solved problems, never taken real risks. You just sit in your comfortable studio and criticize people who actually matter." The word matter hit Colbert like a slap. His carefully maintained professional demeanor finally cracked completely. "People who matter? You think because you have money, you matter more than everyone else? You're just another spoiled rich kid who inherited wealth and convinced himself he's a genius." Musk's eyes flashed dangerously. "Inherited wealth? I came to America with nothing and built multiple billion-dollar companies from scratch. What have you ever built besides a career making fun of your betters?" The condescension in Musk's voice was unmistakable, and it pushed Colbert over the edge. "My betters? You arrogant piece of—" He caught himself before completing the profanity, but the intention was clear. The studio audience audibly gasped at how close their beloved late-night host had come to swearing on live television. Security personnel had now positioned themselves closer to the set, ready to intervene if the confrontation turned physical. The tension was so thick it felt like the air itself might explode. Both men were breathing heavily, faces flushed with anger, their professional masks completely discarded. Musk seized on Colbert's near slip. "There it is. The real Stephen Colbert. Not the folksy everyman character you play on TV, but the bitter, jealous person underneath who resents anyone more successful than him." Colbert's response was swift and brutal. "Successful? You mean like when you called that rescue diver a pedophile because he hurt your feelings? Or when you manipulated cryptocurrency prices with your tweets? That's not success, Elon. That's the behavior of a narcissistic child with too much money and no adult supervision." The reference to Musk's past controversies hit him like a physical blow. His face went pale, then immediately flushed red with rage. The studio fell into an even deeper silence as everyone present realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Two public figures destroying each other on live television with no regard for consequences. Musk's voice, when he spoke again, was barely controlled fury. "How dare you bring up—" "How dare I?" Colbert interrupted, his voice rising to match Musk's intensity. "How dare you come on my show and act like you're above criticism when you've spent years attacking people on social media? You want to dish it out, but you can't take it when someone fights back with facts?" The interruption sent Musk into a complete rage. His composure, which had been hanging by a thread, finally snapped entirely. "Facts? You call tabloid gossip and hit pieces facts? You're nothing but a propaganda mouthpiece for people who want to tear down American innovation." Colbert stepped around his desk now, closing the distance between them. The move was aggressive, designed to intimidate, but Musk didn't back down. Instead, he moved closer as well, bringing them face to face in a confrontation that looked more like a barroom brawl than a television interview. The cameras captured every moment of the escalating hostility, with close-ups showing the genuine anger and hatred in both men's eyes. "American innovation?" Colbert's voice was now a full shout. "You're not American innovation. You're South African privilege buying your way into American companies and then claiming credit for other people's work. You didn't found Tesla, you bought your way in and then rewrote the history. The accusation about Tesla's founding was a devastating blow. Musk's entire public persona was built around being seen as a visionary founder, and having that narrative challenged on live television in front of millions of viewers was clearly unbearable for him. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and for a terrifying moment it looked like he might actually throw a punch. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Musk snarled, his voice now completely unrecognizable from the composed businessman who had walked onto the set. "I've poured my life into these companies, while you've spent your career making cheap jokes about people better than you." The audience was now actively uncomfortable, with some people getting up from their seats and heading for the exits. This had gone far beyond entertainment into something genuinely disturbing. The hatred between the two men was palpable, and the studio felt like a powder keg about to explode. Colbert wasn't backing down despite the physical intimidation. "Better than me? You think having money makes you better than other people? You're just another tech bro who got lucky and convinced himself he's saving the world while treating workers like garbage and manipulating stock prices." The stock manipulation accusation was another direct hit. Musk had faced SEC investigations and lawsuits over his social media posts affecting Tesla's stock price, and bringing it up in this context was clearly calculated to inflict maximum damage. His face contorted with rage as he struggled to formulate a response. "At least I create value instead of just tearing people down for ratings," Musk finally managed to shout back. "Your entire career is built on negativity and division. You're everything wrong with modern media." The personal attacks were now flying fast and furious, with both men abandoning any attempt at civility. Colbert's response was immediate and brutal. "Creating value? Like when you promised to donate billions to charity and then spent the money on Twitter instead? Or when you promised to end world hunger if the UN could show you a plan, then disappeared when they actually did it?" Each accusation was like a dagger aimed at Musk's carefully constructed public image. His breathing was becoming labored, his face red with fury and what looked like genuine distress. The confrontation had clearly triggered something deep and personal in him, and his response showed it. "You're a liar!" Musk screamed, jabbing his finger inches from Colbert's face. "You're deliberately distorting everything to make me look bad. This is character assassination." Colbert didn't flinch from the aggressive gesture. Instead, he leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper that somehow carried more threat than his previous shouting. "Character assassination? Elon, I don't need to assassinate your character. You've done that yourself with every petty tweet, every broken promise, and every time you've attacked someone for telling the truth about your companies." The words hit Musk like physical blows. His entire body was trembling now, whether from rage or something else entirely. The cameras captured every moment of his breakdown, showing a man who had built his entire identity around being in control, completely losing that control on national television. "This is over," Musk said suddenly, his voice shaking. "I'm not going to sit here and let you destroy my reputation with lies and smears. This isn't journalism. It's a public execution disguised as an interview." He turned away from Colbert and began walking toward the edge of the set, but Colbert wasn't finished. "Running away, Elon? That's your solution to everything, isn't it? When things get tough, you just blame the media and run to your Twitter echo chamber, where everyone tells you how great you are." Musk stopped dead in his tracks, his back still turned to Colbert. The studio fell silent except for the hum of equipment and the sound of both men's heavy breathing. When Musk slowly turned around, his expression was one of pure hatred, mixed with something that looked almost like desperation. "You want to know what's really going on here, Stephen?" Musk's voice was now eerily calm, which somehow made it more frightening than his previous shouting. "You're jealous. You're jealous that while you've spent your entire career making jokes about real people doing real things, I've actually changed the world. And you can't stand it. The accusation of jealousy clearly struck a nerve with Colbert. His professional composure, which had been cracking throughout the confrontation, finally shattered completely. Jealous? Of what? Your ability to manipulate people? Your talent for making promises you can't keep? Your skill at buying your way out of consequences? Musk's face went through a series of expressions: rage, disbelief, and finally something that looked like genuine hurt. The personal nature of the attacks had clearly affected him more deeply than he wanted to admit. His voice, when he finally spoke, was quieter, but filled with venom. You know what, Stephen? I came here thinking I could have an intelligent conversation with someone I respected. But you're just another media parasite feeding off successful people. The word parasite sent shockwaves through the studio. Even the production crew, who had seen countless heated exchanges over the years, looked stunned at the level of personal viciousness being displayed. Colbert's eyes widened with fury at the insult, and his response was immediate and devastating. Parasite? That's rich coming from someone whose entire fortune is built on government subsidies and stock manipulation. You've never had an original idea in your life. You just buy companies and slap your name on other people's innovations. Colbert's voice cracked with emotion, the stress of the confrontation finally taking its toll. The attack on Musk's originality was clearly the final straw. His entire body went rigid, and when he spoke, his voice was barely human, more like a growl of pure rage. That's it. I'm done with this character assassination masquerading as journalism. You're a pathetic excuse for a human being, and this show is a joke. Musk began gathering himself to leave, but Colbert wasn't finished destroying him. The only joke here is you, Elon, a middle-aged man having a public meltdown because someone finally asked you tough questions. This is what happens when you spend too much time in your echo chamber. You can't handle reality. The words seemed to physically stagger Musk. He turned back toward Colbert with such intensity that security personnel began moving closer to the set, ready to intervene if necessary. The hatred in his eyes was unlike anything the studio audience had ever witnessed in person. You want reality, Stephen? Musk's voice was now a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more menace than his previous shouting. Here's reality. You're a failed actor who found a niche attacking people more successful than you. Your entire career is built on other people's failures because you've never accomplished anything worth celebrating. The personal attack hit Colbert like a physical blow, but instead of backing down, it seemed to energize him for one final devastating counterattack. Failed actor? At least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. At least I don't lie to investors, manipulate cryptocurrencies, and call rescue workers pedophiles when my feelings get hurt. You're not a visionary, Elon. You're just a rich man-child with a Twitter addiction. The reference to his past controversies was the breaking point. Musk's face went completely white, then flushed red with such intensity that it looked like he might have a stroke. His hands were shaking with rage, and his breathing became rapid and shallow. The cameras captured every moment of his complete psychological breakdown. This interview is over, Musk declared, his voice cracking with emotion. I refuse to sit here and be attacked by someone whose only talent is tearing down people who actually matter. You're pathetic, Stephen. Your show is pathetic, and your audience deserves better than this garbage. He ripped off his wireless microphone and threw it onto Colbert's desk with such force that it skittered across the surface and fell to the floor. The sound echoed through the stunned studio as Musk began storming toward the exit, his face a mask of fury and humiliation. But Colbert couldn't resist one final shot. Running away again, Elon, just like you did when your submarine idea was rejected, just like you do every time someone calls out your lies. Musk stopped dead in his tracks at the edge of the set. For a terrifying moment, it looked like he might actually charge back and physically attack Colbert. The entire studio held its breath as he slowly turned around one last time, his expression one of pure hatred. You know what your problem is, Stephen? Musk's voice was eerily calm now, which made it even more frightening. You've spent so long pretending to be someone else that you've forgotten who you really are. At least when people hate me, they're hating the real person. When they hate you, they're just hating a character. With that devastating final blow, Musk turned and walked off the set, leaving behind a stunned studio and a visibly shaken Colbert. The host stood alone behind his desk, breathing heavily, his carefully constructed persona completely shattered by the brutal confrontation. The cameras continued rolling as Colbert struggled to regain his composure, but the damage was done. The audience sat in uncomfortable silence, having witnessed something that felt more like a public breakdown than television entertainment. Production assistants scrambled to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show, but everyone knew that what had just happened would overshadow everything else. As Musk disappeared through the studio doors, presumably heading straight for his car, the full weight of the confrontation began to settle over everyone present. This wasn't just a heated interview gone wrong. It was the complete destruction of two public figures' carefully maintained images, broadcast live to millions of viewers. The confrontation had revealed ugly truths about both men that neither could take back. Colbert's reputation as a professional interviewer lay in ruins, while Musk's image as a composed tech visionary had been obliterated by his emotional breakdown. The entertainment industry would spend months analyzing what went wrong and how. Such a spectacular failure of professionalism could happen on live television. Within hours, clips of the confrontation would be trending on every social media platform, with viewers expressing shock, disgust, and fascination at witnessing such raw hatred between two prominent figures. The incident would mark a turning point in late-night television, raising serious questions about the responsibilities of hosts and the limits of acceptable discourse in entertainment.